All right, everybody. Hello and welcome to another AMA. This is AMA number 31 for Holo and Holochain. I'm Matthew Schutte. I'm here today with Mary Camacho, our executive director, as well as David Atkinson, our commercial director. We're going to start off with some quick thank yous. Once again, we'd like to thank our contributors, our collaborators, our supporters, community builders, partners, and hApp creators who all share the vision of a more distributed internet. Special thanks to those who are writing, reviewing, and or creating our community resources to increase engagement and awareness. We encourage you to visit holo.host and to follow us on Twitter to learn more about what we do. And check out our forum at forum.holochain.org, where the resources are available to help you build your first Holochain app. Some quick announcements. There are several upcoming meetups and events planned in October. You can go check those out at holo.host/events. Pardon me. And with that, do we have any announcements? And do we have an update on status from you, Mary?
There we go.
Oh, we've got the events live. I'll just read through those real quick. So we have Holochain at Fête de la Science in France on October 12th. On the 15th, there's a dinner in Lisbon, Portugal. On the 18th, we have Moin World Blockchain Conference in Hamburg. On the 21st through the 28th is MozFest, the Mozilla Conference in London. There's going to be a handful of us there. That's going to be fun. On the 24th, Holochain Apps Exploration in Barcelona. That Barcelona community is really blowing up. So you other cities, you better pick up your game. October 25th through 27th, Inisi in Barcelona. On the 26th of October, we've got Rust Tokyo that we'll be participating in Tokyo. And on the 29th through 30th, we'll go to Decidim Fest in Barcelona as well. All right, Mary, status?
All right. Just a quick note. I'll be at that Moin Fest, or the Moin World blockchain, Women in Blockchain conference in Hamburg myself. So that'll be a lot of fun. Anyway, so update on status. So we've made a lot of announcements lately about features we've built in Holo and in Holochain. And some of those things are features we've known we were going to deliver as we work to make the testing available to all the Holoport owners during closed alpha. But some are new innovations that have come up in the course of our development. And that's because this is something fundamentally different in cutting edge technologies. And so we've been learning as we go and iterating as we go. So we've shared a lot about those challenges along the way. And sometimes that visibility or transparency has created a little bit of FUD in our social channels, we understand. And that's sometimes tough to hear, but you know, we really think we're doing the right things. We're building the right tech, we're solving important problems, and we're laying a foundation for the next net. So we're making distributed computing and distributed web available to everyone. So where are we? We turned a corner on what has been our biggest challenge. And I think that's really, really important to highlight here today. Last week, we posted a relatively technical article up on our leadership post about Sim1H, which is our latest module or implementation of networking. Sim1H doesn't replace what we've shared as the networking module solution for Holochain that's called lib3h. Instead, it works alongside it, and it solves a lot of the problems for us that we've been working on in our development and testing. We've only had it fully implemented in Holochain Core a short while, but already we're able to identify where interactions between our core and networking components are failing, and we're able to fix them. And this has really accelerated our development across the board, and it adds a boost in our confidence and moved our closed alpha testing that we're going to be moving forward with to wider audiences in that closed alpha testing. So specifically, I just want to talk a little bit about what that is. This latest Holochain release, which is our v0.031 alpha 1, if you're out there looking on GitHub, this integrates the use of Sim1H networking. And what that does is it provides distributed app developers who are working in Holochain, both internal here with Holo and everyone out who's working on distributed apps, hApps. It provides a way to network the applications for many interacting nodes and agents. And importantly, it provides the single view of all the network activity. This is just huge when it comes to debugging. And this really means that all of you out there who are building applications on Holochain and you've been waiting for something to shift on networking, you can now accelerate your development too. So we've been making a lot of other great progress along with Holo, and that's with the Holoport initialization and the registration process, and also on our front-end application work for HoloFuel and Holoport admin. I think our latest Dev Pulse was talking a little bit about the process that Holoport admin will go through for users. So things are really coming together. I know everyone's hoping for a big announcement, and it will come. It's not today, but we have a few items that we still need to complete and to test working together before we're going to do that. So now that we've unblocked networking, we're accelerating that work, and we're going to be looking forward to sharing each win with you guys as we go along.
Thanks, Mary.
That's about it.
All right, next up. First question, can you provide a simple-ish explanation for how HoloFuel mutual credit balances will flow between developers, hosts, and Holo Reserve? Do you want to take this one, Mary?
Sure. So I'll try to make this super simple. Step one, someone who wants to host an app, a cloud hosting customer, will purchase HoloFuel at a reserve. In that transaction, the reserve HoloFuel credit line would be debited, and that's a liability. The liability is increased, and the cloud hosting customer's HoloFuel account would be credited. That's step one. Step two is a host provides hosting to the cloud hosting customer and then invoices that customer and gets paid in HoloFuel. And in that transaction, the host's HoloFuel account would be credited while the cloud hosting customer's HoloFuel account will be debited. So I'm trying to make this simple, but this is accounting. And so all you're going to hear is debits and credits because that's the way the question has to be answered. The third step in this kind of scenario is that a host would redeem HoloFuel at a reserve. And that would mean that the host's HoloFuel account would be debited and the reserve's HoloFuel credit line would then be credited. And that would reduce the liability on the reserve credit line. I think that's about it. So maybe we'll put some diagrams out on that one pretty soon. That would be useful.
and we've got some of this stuff, in our very lengthy white papers, etc. But the basic gist is, good
luck with this.
Our account goes down, and there it goes up in HoloFuel. They give us some money, some crypto, whether it's ETH or dollars or euros or whatever the particular currency is at that moment in time. Mary,
whatever currency is used in the reserve, because each reserve is a specific currency.
Bingo. So if this is an ETH transaction, they transfer some ETH and we give them some HoloFuel or something like that, then, right? So this is the ETH reserve. Yeah, we'll start with hot, right? So they give us some hot and we give some HoloFuel. Great. The HoloFuel balances are what we're talking about here. Those change in these ways. And the price at which that HoloFuel can get redeemed back for hot is that price, right? If it was ETH, that would be the price. Again, later on when somebody wants to come and redeem that back, the host comes and wants to redeem that back.
That's the complex part. This was the simple answer.
Yeah. All right. We'll leave that be. So the long story short is this is the flow of resources as we're envisioning it if they redeem, right? When a host actually redeems, but that's not the only way in which they could have made use of that HoloFuel, right? Of course, they can go use it. They might spend it on an external exchange, et cetera, et cetera. But in terms of the actual flow for the reserve accounts, this is the flow. Mary, can you make one quick comment for folks who aren't super familiar about what happens if that person got that HoloFuel not through hosting?
Well, the way that I was describing the scenario, the beginning was just the way that somebody enters in to get HoloFuel if you don't have it. If you already have it, then it starts with the payment of it for hosting. But HoloFuel can be used in a lot of different ways, but we're building a hosting platform. So the intended use for us is hosting, and what we're going to be mostly sharing about is how people will transact with it and how the accounting is going to happen within that hosting platform.
Yeah. Okay, next up. What do you foresee the UX, that's jargon for user experience, to be like for user authentication and interactions with hApps hosted on Holo? I'll make a quick comment here. So that's up to the application developers and users themselves. We're trying to create or foster an ecosystem of applications here. So there's not going to be a one-size-fits-all formula. That said, we do expect that many applications will make use of some of the apps that we've already been building for helping with identity, authentication, et cetera, such as Deep Key for key revocation and replacement, and the Personas app for making it easy for users to share information with particular apps. So this would be like, hey, I've got my name and address and phone number, and I do want to share those with this particular application. Or I've got a username and I want to share that with this. But that process should be, we've built an app, a Holochain app, that can talk to other apps and makes it easier for a user to have control over all of that, while with that being under their own agency, their own power, not living with some other centralized service. We created a video earlier this month. Philip Beadle, one of our developers, who is now our new community, what is it? Dev empowerment. Is that his role? He's like the lead for developer empowerment. Earlier this month, he did a great overview of what this kind of UX might work like, right? It's not the, hey, this is how they will always look. It's not the user interface necessarily, but hey, this is the flow of the process. And so though it's an early version and it'll get prettier, you can check out that video. We'll drop a link in the chat. And that's about it. Any other thoughts or comments from anybody else? All right. Next up, how's progress going with the development of the HoloPortOS? Who wants to take this one on? Anybody? Oh, you're muted, Mary.
Sorry about that. I'm having technical challenges with multiple screens here today. So I talked a little bit about this up above when I was giving the status update. So the HoloPortOS, it's not just OS. The HoloPortOS has been built for a while. I mean, the HoloPortOS is already on the Holoports that are in the warehouses waiting to go out. So when we talk about the development that's happening for Holoports at this point, what we're really talking about is the pieces of it that get updated when you plug it in, and what process it goes through to initialize your Holoport, what process a user goes through to register the Holoport, and then basically getting you ready to use the Holoport. And that's what we've made significant progress on lately. So that I think there's been a little bit of write-up on that in one of our recent dev pulses, and we're going to continue to share more about that and start showing people what that's looking like soon. So
great, thank you, Mary. All right, next up, how many nodes have you tested so far, and can you provide an estimate of how far along lib3h development is? Mary, you want to take that one too?
Yeah, sure. I'm answering a lot of the questions. So the number of nodes on a network, it's a really important metric, and it's especially important for live systems, and also for knowing where a network is along a testing sort of arc. But up until now, it hasn't really been the top priority for our developers, because keeping the tests smaller has really allowed them to have better debugging success. Now that we have the Sim1H tool, and we're expanding that to include security and validation, we have visibility into all of the transaction on the network in one place. And this is really an important shift, because now we have the tools to debug big networks, because we have that holoptic view. And this is going to be true both in development and also in all of our alpha test networks. So that's a really huge accomplishment that we've been trying to share and make visible for people. So we didn't exactly time our stress testing to go with this AMA. So I don't have a number for you about how many nodes are working. We're actually running that stress test today. We'll share what the results are of that because we know that everybody wants to hear about the number of nodes, but it's also just generally something we care about, and we're going to be able we're going to need to know as we make our test more widely available during closed alpha. So it's coming.
And I'll make just one comment. Oh, go ahead, David.
Yeah, no, I was going to just add in that one of the reasons we're so excited about Sim1H is that it has and we've communicated this in the leadership post and dev polls, but it has an order of magnitude jump in the number of nodes from where we're at with lib3h.
Wonderful. The one thing I'll say is, Mary mentioned that we'll have visibility into all the transactions on the network in one place. When we're saying the network, we mean the network for that particular application, right? Just a reminder for all those folks at home, there is no one big Holochain network. This is a pattern that people are using in an app. So even if that's a really big application, there's lots of users, this gives us the ability to at least do the debugging at that kind of scale. For certain layers, there may be things that we need to actually debug differently when we shift to lib3h, but a whole lot of stuff is able to be debugged with that Sim1H networking module. All right, next up, 6. Is the credit limit for hosts still likely to be equal to the last 3 months of earnings? What's your hunch on the behavioral dynamics? For example, will hosts always spend up to their credit limit? Mary, you want to kick this off?
Sure. I mean, I have a pretty straightforward or simple answer, I guess. We're not really predicting this. We've looked at a wide variety of assumptions in scenarios, but people really aren't as predictable. That's why everybody does testing with users that are real. And with new tech, it's even less so. So as we roll out the Holo network features that are going to move us towards dynamic supply, we're really going to iterate and keep testing and seeing how that's being used. And we'll let people know. That's part of like the sharing about how it's going that we will be doing with the live network.
Great. And I'll just jump in a little bit here to add a quick comment. So credit limits are just that, right? They're limits. I have a credit limit with some various credit card companies. I don't generally go to the max on that. We'll see how people behave in this system. Hosts will make use of those credit limits in ways that work for them. And depending on how that usage is going and the impact that it's having on the functioning of the ecosystem, we'll adjust our processes and our signaling systems for determining credit limits accordingly. So for folks that are familiar with our team and how we think, they won't be shocked to hear that, as Mary said, we expect this to mature and evolve with testing and experience. David, you want to add to that at all?
Yeah, just a little bit of context, because I get asked quite a bit about our overall sort of development efforts. And one thing I don't think we've made too public is just the size and breadth of what we're doing. I think, and Mary can jump in and correct me, but we have about 30 developers or people in the development team, the product team at the moment, working on Holochain Core, working on networking, working on the Holo Central, we call it, but the different Holo apps that we've talked about, working on testing and integration, and specifically around then also new Holochain applications. Each team will have somewhere between 3 and 8 people. So it's just a few people have asked me recently, and I think what they hadn't seen publicly is the large scale up and shifts of productivity in the team over the last 12 months. And this is now very professionally run teams that are churning out a whole lot of great output. And also wanted to give that sense, because when people think about what we're building and they think about Holo and Holochain and HoloFuel and these different pieces, when we talk about we've got these steps in testing and integration, when I give that picture of, okay, there's 30 people in the product team and they're working in these 4, 5, 6 different areas, well, we need to bring those areas together as we get closer to release. So hopefully that context shows you guys out there watching this that there's a huge amount of power coming to the product at the moment from a whole bunch of different people. Thank you, all of them who are working on that. I know they don't always like to speak publicly. So, so thank you very, very much to all of you, if any of you are watching.
Yeah, oddly enough, many of our developers just love developing. That's what they want to spend their time doing, not necessarily being talking heads like the three of us spend some of our time doing. We're able to pull them out on occasion. We're able to get them out of the away from the screen that has words on it to the screen that has a camera attached to it. All right. Is Sim1H being built because the team thinks it will take too long to get full networking to production level? I'll start with this. So Sim1H is a version of networking that solves a few problems for other areas of development, as Mary had already articulated, right? Because apps are able to be tested and debugged with Sim1H, it accelerates development of other non-networking parts of Holochain. This pattern is a common one in the world of software development. Build a thing that solves a problem, even if it might not be the ultimate form that you're planning to have in place. Then with that piece in place, even if it's just a temporary fix, other areas that have been stuck get to start moving forward. We actually think that even though Sim1H won't be the form that networking takes in Holochain apps in production, it will continue to be useful for developers as they're building apps because of the ways it makes certain aspects of testing and debugging simple. So this step-by-step approach to iteratively scaffolding up application development makes the process more bite-sized, easy, and effective. And we think it's going to unblock the creation of lots of Holochain apps in the future.
Yeah. And just to jump in, Matt, we're also super aware and conscious that like we've talked about many times, we want to get the ports shipped as quickly as possible. So anything that accelerates the path to doing that is a huge priority for us.
Yeah. All right, next step. How will Sim1H impact the team's ability to make progress on punching through firewalls? Mary, you want to try this?
Yeah, this is kind of related to what you were just saying on this. I think it's important. Sim1H doesn't directly impact the ability for us to make progress on any other specific feature, but it has completely changed our ability to iterate and debug networking and the integration with Holochain Core. It also, as you just pointed out, gives a direct ability to do debugging and give visibility to how transactions are working within a Holochain application, on the fly. And this change really sets us up to be able to deliver each of the critical features without the previous interdependency that was adding unnecessary complexity. So technically, what it's allowing us to do is to iteratively add the critical features of node discovery, NAT traversal, which is what was asked about specifically in this question, gossip, and DHT sharding separately, individually, into our longer-term networking solution, lib3h, because these things can be working simultaneously to make this, to make the whole effort work and test. And that's what we're seeing available right now. So when I said it earlier in I think the words I used earlier when I was giving the update was, we've turned a corner, and that corner is about accelerating everything in development right now. And we're just seeing huge leaps forward on it, and we're going to keep sharing those every week.
Thanks, Mary. All right, next up. What do you think about putting Holoports in space? Are you familiar with Spacechain? Wouldn't Holo or Holochain work better than what they're currently using? David, you wanna take this?
Yeah, totally. We've actually chatted with Spacechain, and they've struggled with the two protocols that they've tried to use on the satellites. So it's an interesting question, and the idea of Holochain being in space is pretty exciting. Not necessarily the Holoports, though. I mean, Holoports could potentially go into space, but I think like the more we'll be thinking of a Holochain-powered IoT device where different satellites could be communicating, transacting. All of the communication is asynchronous, most likely, depending on the connection up there. And then when one of the satellites is plugged into a connection, then you can synchronize all of the transactions. And as far as we could tell, for the breadth of features that they're looking for, or someone's looking for true peer-to-peer communication in space, Holochain is the only protocol that can meet their needs.
Yeah, do you have something you want to say there, Mary? No, okay. For me, it's really interesting because space is one of these contexts where, because of the giant distances, the relativistic nature of the holochain architecture is a game changer, right? Like, that's why what David said matters, right? Holochain's the only one that can meet your needs. When you have really huge distances and there's really long latency for just the signal to get there, the reality of Einstein's general theory of relativity, right, that there is no universal ordering of events, becomes really important, right? Like, really important. Vint Cerf, who is most well known for his work on TCP/IP, he's like one of the guys that literally invented the internet. In recent years, he's been focusing a lot of efforts on, oh yeah, what kind of communication system will we need for like interstellar kind of communication where you have these huge distances. Yeah, so I laughed as reading, Holoports in space, right? Because it sounds kind of funny. But Holochain in space, yeah, no, big distances, recognizing that the agent or the device's perspective, that the ordering of events as received is actually really critical information. That's how we should be holding things. And then we are able to pull multiple devices' perspectives about the orders that they saw to combine and generate additional information, additional dimensions of information that becomes relevant. Many of you have probably heard me do this example before, but when you take two pieces of information, you combine them, you get something more. And the simple example that I use is, if you cover one eye and look out at the world, you see an image. If you cover your other eye and look out the world, you see a very slightly different image. But if you have both eyes, you see depth. You don't just have two images. You have an additional dimension of information. And that's what each user holding onto their ordering of events and then being able to combine those enables you to do. It enables you to actually gain sort of a depth of insight into things that trying to compress things into some single ordering from some universal vantage point does not allow.
It's beautiful, man. So yeah, if any of you out there have any space applications, come and talk to us.
Yeah, if you've got space,
we're ready for you.
In outer space, or like rooms for us to crash in while we're traveling around the world. No, okay. Bum. All right, next up. What use cases will Holo enable that are currently impossible with today's internet and crypto ecosystem? Mary, you want to try this one on?
Well, sure. I mean, we've talked about it a little bit, right? In the past, I don't know that I want to spend a whole lot of time, but Holochain just takes an entirely different approach to identity and privacy. It puts agents, normal people like you and me, at the core of what you're designing. And some aspects about what makes that important to understand is that, it's not just about anonymity. It's about trust inside of an app community and being able to opt in to what part of your identity you may want to share with different groups or different applications, or with different communities, right? So in simple terms, you just get to control your identity. You get to control who has access to the data. And fundamentally, you always own the data you post in every application you post it to. And that's huge if you think about it, because today, if you would choose to leave any social app as an example, you just lose access to everything you've ever posted there, right? So say, for example, I decide I'm going to remove my LinkedIn profile. I would lose all the content, all the posts, all the messages with people I've ever talked to there. And that just can't happen with a Holochain app, because you have all of that content on your chain. So, for those of you who have heard about Adobe's news and how they recently discontinued providing services to everyone in Venezuela because the government told them to, with a distributed app, that can't happen. Software as a service is convenient, but the cost of that convenience, up until now, has been that the company you're getting that service from, either for free or in this case that you might pay for, they can take it away anytime and you don't have any recourse. That's what we solve. That's what Holochain doesn't allow for fundamentally.
Yeah, just building on that, I think whenever we have this question, I still think the the most exciting things are the things that we don't even know are possible, things that people come up with. And that's the same with any, groundbreaking technology that also allows for a shift in social patterns. You just can't predict what's going to happen when these social patterns shift. And that's the step in the future that I'm really excited about. But in the steps towards then, we talked a little bit about the way that space might change and what Holochain could bring to outer space, the worlds of satellites and some things that the internet really hasn't been able to disrupt. Aviation is another big one. I'm really excited about the multi-stakeholder, multi-party nature of aviation and how we can transform the interactions between aeroplanes, airlines, passengers, and airports. Might be from the back office perspective, it might be from the traveler perspective. So especially these aspects of transportation, because you can combining technology with movement, with where we are in the world and how we move differently through the world. I love the way those two things can forge together. There's also another one. I think so many people are trying to crack this. I just got a real excitement that we might be the ones, not that we'll build the application, that we'll build the infrastructure that supports the application with a new paradigm in artists connecting with their audiences. Yeah, I think there's possibilities for the types of communications and transactions that are possible between creators and community that are very different. And a seed for that will be the way the community around Holochain is building feels different from other projects in this space. Why is that? What's the essence of that? Can we tap into some of that and build applications that also not just have the same feeling, but have new patterns for possibility? That's very, very exciting to me. And then there's worlds of, Matt talks a lot about supply chain and the possibilities there and the way Holochain can adapt to the ever-changing external environment that I get very, very excited about. And a couple of our devs talk about the disaster relief and the way we can shift disaster relief on its head, and people in large agencies saying this is the kind of technology they would have always designed if they knew how to design technology to solve these problems, where we can flip the challenges and have people speaking into their needs rather than the agencies dictating the solutions. There's a lot out there.
Yeah, a couple of things popped up for me as you all were speaking. One was actually just to add, I don't want to repeat things, so I'll just try to add things. In the new paradigm in artists connecting with their audiences, right? There's been a demand or a need for that for a long time. There's various applications that kind of enable those sorts of things today, but it tends to be in the form of marketing, right? It tends to be like, I'm going to ping you and give you content or let you know that we're coming to a new show, or those kinds of things. And I think that part of what I'm seeing at the edge of, let's say, the world of musicians, is musicians that are not just trying to do the "I'm performing for you" thing, but some other form of relationship that's actually about, like, we're going to be creating things together. And these, like, different forms of relationship, I'm really excited to see what becomes possible there. I won't talk too much about supply chains because I've talked about that stuff a whole bunch in the past. But I will touch on a little bit of the like kind of a new economic paradigm. So right now, so much of our interactions are mediated, our relationships in the general world are mediated by dollars, right? I go and give somebody some dollars and they give me some food, right? And they go and give somebody else some dollars and they give them some vegetables, and somebody else some dollars and they give them some hours of their time to cook those vegetables, And there's a whole bunch of this stuff that's being fostered by that particular signaling system. Money, dollars, euros, etc., are a communication technology, and they have certain attributes. There's certain features that they have and ways that they work. And And at one level, money is this thing that enables distributed coordination today. It's a centralized thing, right? Because it's issued by, let's say, a Federal Reserve or a government or whatever. But because it has integrity, right? Because they control printing technology tightly, it was like at the, back in the day, that was like the core thing. It made it so that the only way you got dollars was by showing up and contributing, like actually providing some sort of service to somebody else. That was the at least the theory. Sometimes you could get dollars by stealing them. That's actually a bug, right? That's a breakdown in the integrity of that particular communication technology. If dollars are supposed to be about fostering flows of service amongst the members of the community and helping that community prioritize, the fact that you can get recognized without having contributed because you managed to steal something, it's actually a failure of that system. But the integrity management stuff, this whole, hey, they had, this, like, let's say the Federal Reserve had this special printing technology, was a really key part of what enables people to rely upon that these dollars came from this source. They have integrity. Cryptography is enabling us to do that kind of integrity, that kind of like, hey, there was somebody who had a secret printer that nobody else had, so I can trust that it came from this source, because anybody can create a private key that becomes very difficult for other people to emulate, for the other people to discover, right? It's not a perfect solution. It's not the end all be all, but it suddenly makes it so that we can issue different kinds of signals, not just dollars that were printed with special technology, but any form of communication. Hey, he showed up on time, and I'm the one who said that. Matthew was the issuer of that statement. Or this was organic, and it's this person who's been certified by a government agency or by this nonprofit or by this community of practitioners, right? Those kinds of things start to, because they have an underlying integrity that's available, that has never really before been possible, it can enable some very different kinds of signaling and communication in distributed patterns. So I won't dive into that too much more because we've talked about this kind of stuff a lot, but there's a whole bunch of new stuff that's available there, and it will foster different flows. And if you're interested in learning more, go dork out a little bit. Check out the Metacurrency project where Holochain came out of. Look at the work that we've done on deep wealth. And also go and check out the Commons engine. They are in the middle of a, I think, 10-week currency design program right now. The current Commons engine is a group that's spun out of Holochain. They're focusing on these kinds of fostering new economic systems, many of which are going to be rooted in Holochain or making use of Holochain. But they're helping level up people's understanding of currencies, what they are. Often currency is very misunderstood, even by people who are like in the blockchain world and quote unquote designing currencies. They have this very limited understanding of what currencies can be or might be. Go check out that Commons Engine currency design course. They're doing it live at the moment, but we're also going to be, I think they're going to be having that be available later on in video form. All right. Any other thoughts there? I think we're pretty thorough on that one. Next up, could an hAppp be developed for Holochain that would allow an electronic voting system that would be more secure than what's possible with blockchain and other electronic voting systems, like proposed email systems? Are there unique advantages to using Holo or Holochain to developing an electronic voting system that could not be hacked, would maintain full privacy, and would allow for anyone or any group to audit an election immediately, i.e. allow for full transparency? I'm thinking of some type of voting system as convenient as going to a web page and filling out a ballot. I asked about election integrity before, and I appreciated your answers, but I'm wanting to know more specifically about the unique advantages of using Holo or Holochain. Thank you. So yeah, we did this, I think, on the last AMA. I think it was the last one, maybe it was the one before, but with Eric. I think we've probably answered this a number of times, but I would initially say, hey, go watch the video. Eric made some comments, I made some comments. But I'll also say, yes, our elections at present are there's not a whole lot of confidence that people are able to have that doesn't directly stem from their just simple faith in the institutions of their government, right? In the electoral integrity systems of their government at present. So if you're like, there's some dicey characters in there, sometimes people kind of stretch the rules, it undermines the faith that your vote actually got counted, that all votes got counted, all that kind of stuff. Last time we spoke a fair bit about, hey, there's all kinds of different voting technologies or voting processes that Holochain might foster and make available. But in just a really simple regard, being able to have both parties, let's say the government agency that's receiving the vote and the person who's casting the vote, to have both of you have a receipt and be able to go check that, and maybe being able to go check that in a way that nobody else can see who did the vote. They can see, yes, this party had the right to vote, but they can't see who you were or how you voted. But you're able to go see, and if there's a problem, you're able to go, hey, there's an issue here. My receipt says this, but the public record says this, and those are not the same. Or the public record isn't showing me. And look, here's my record. That ability to sort of highlight discrepancies after the fact and have anybody be able to highlight those discrepancies, that starts to create a big shift in terms of people's willingness to trust in that system, right? It's a very radically different integrity management system. It's kind of like in accounting centuries ago, the invention of double entry accounting made it so that it became much less likely that, whoops, I made a typo and accidentally got paid a whole bunch of extra money, right? Because you would have had to have made that mistake in two separate processes. And if you did, then it becomes much more likely that you're committing fraud, right? And so it was both about like catching mistakes, but also about identifying where people were having some sort of nefarious intent. I think Holochain in the voting context will have some kind of similar impact. Any other comments there? That was a little long-winded, but all right. Next up, any progress on regulatory approval for reserve accounts and such in Gibraltar? Mary, you're in Gibraltar. You want to take this?
I am in Gibraltar, sure. So yeah, we're fully in the process for receiving regulatory approval here, and there really isn't a lot to share about it that's newsworthy. We're just kind of doing the work with the regulators so that they understand Holo and ensuring that we're set to do business, in ways that are visible, have visibility, transparency, and integrity. And it's always been our commitment. So this is just something we go through as a business.
Great, thank you, Mary. And we're getting close to the end here. So this is probably going to be our last question. When did you guys realize it would take more than 2 years to deliver the Holoports? Who wants to take that one on?
I can start, and then maybe Mary can improve. But I think we get these kind of questions. I guess I'm reading into this question that someone's quite frustrated or wants to say that we're a scam and that we promised that we'd do something in 2 months that is now taking us 2 years, but we knew all along. And I think we've been very honest about both the technical decisions that we've made over the period of time. I think we're on number 49 consecutive weeks of dev pulse around the different forms of development and technical progress we've been making. The reality is, when we set out on this pathway, there were unknown unknowns that we've confronted, and we've looked at everything head on, and we've just continued to make progress. And there are times where that's been slower than the community likes. And I've always said that the frustration that people are feeling on the outside is only magnified on the inside. We're all here because we want to build the applications that Holochain makes possible. We want them in the world, and we want to be building them, and we want to see other people building them. So the pressures felt here. The pressures felt here, and the pressures magnified here. We have just 50 people who are incredibly committed and passionate about what we're doing. And this is a crucial thing in our lives. So I really get and I appreciate the question. I think we're all sitting on the same side of the fence in terms of wanting things out there. We hope we've made visible as possible the different steps that we've taken, the positive decisions that have been made, and decisions that have been in the best interest of like the long-term viability of Holochain, Holoports. And at the same time, yeah, we're frustrated that we haven't delivered. Yes. Do we wish we'd delivered earlier? I'm sure all of us do, but we are where we are, and we're making great progress to getting on the final stretch now. Not much more I can say, I think.
I think you said it. And I think we're at time.
All right, everybody. Thank you very much for a wonderful another AMA. Until next time, have a good one, and go visit some of those events, whether they're online events, real world events. Check them out. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, David. Have a good one, everybody. Take care.